Please remain standing for the reading from the Gospel. Listen to the good news of Christ, as proclaimed in the Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 7, beginning at verse 24. Glory to Christ our Savior. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence in secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an evil spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Yes, Lord, she replied, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed and the demon gone. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged him to place his hand on the man. After he took him aside away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. Then he spat and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephata, which means be opened. At this the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. This is the gospel of Christ. Thank you. Please be seated. Let me begin by greeting those at home and just a reminder of our readings today. Those were Psalm 125, Proverbs 22, verse 1 and 2, verse 8 and 9, and verse 22 and 23. From the letter of James, chapter 2, verse 1 to 17, and from the Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, verse 24 to 37. Welcome to spring. As we begin, let me also put on record my sincere thanks to Yanu for the recordings during this time and to Doug for the music. Faithful servants here every Saturday to record the service for the Sunday. To say thank you to those like Marianne and Yanu who assist me in the preparation of our daily devotions. And to keep on nourishing God's people. To all of you, a sincere word of thanks. You have kept the body together. And I remember, when was it? A couple of weeks ago when Doug arrived. Oh, by the way, during, what do you call this? Was it lockdown? I don't think it was lockdown again. But anyway, we also had a visit from Eskom. One particular afternoon, Eskom just decided that the mans no longer need electricity and just cut it. And so for a couple of days, we spent in the dark, about 2 days, again, in the evenings, of course, with the family. In the meantime, Jackie had paid, you see. So Jack just said to me, the words she used cannot be repeated from the pulpit. But within a day, electricity was back at the manse. But then they cut electricity to the church. And Doug arrived to play the organ, and there was not even air. That was in the morning. That afternoon, after I had called Jackie, she said to me, I just repeat my earlier speech, the light should be on. And that afternoon, power was on. So we had all these experiences while we were not here. But God was here. That has always been the amazing thing for me, to come into the sanctuary during taking a moment out of the office and to know that God is here. That's the amazing gift. Proverbs is dedicated to Solomon. And Old Testament scholars tells us that the book of Proverbs is sayings of wisdom that was to be used by the teachers of Israel as they instruct the people. But it is in particular teachings to those in authority, those who have power, and those who control the resources of the nation. That's Solomon's instruction. And in the sections we read from Proverbs, or that Kathy read from Proverbs, it's a clear instruction of how you take care of the most vulnerable among you. Therefore, there's this refrain and the constant repeat of the poor. And Solomon's instructions to the leaders of Israel at his time was to say, you need to take special care of those who are most vulnerable amongst you. That the resources of the nation is not for you to enrich yourself, but to improve the quality of life of those you are given to govern. I think there are some in this country and in this province and in the world that needs to hear that kind of wisdom. That wisdom, and let me begin. Let me say that. The opening sentence in verse 7 of the first chapter of Proverbs says, the fear of the Lord brings knowledge. So Solomon's instruction is to say, however you treat someone else, in whatever way you treat someone else, is a reflection of your relationship with Jesus, in his time with God. It is a reflection of how you understand the covenant and what it means to be God's people. Because when the covenant was instituted in the time of Moses, God said to Moses, tell these people that I will be their God and they will be my people. So everything they do will be a reflection of their relationship with me. Solomon repeats that how you treat others is a reflection of your relationship with God. How we engage with others is a reflection of our relationship with Jesus. Therefore, James speaks that faith is not enough, to believe is not enough. There needs to be some action that follows it. Someone said you cannot see faith, but you can see the marks of the faithful. And that's where it is. And so we are called in our relationships with Jesus to reflect compassion and grace and mercy. To be gentle with each other. I'm so happy that Aggie is not in the service this morning, because she would say to me, Prophet, hear your words. Because when you move stuff around, it brings tension. You know? And it's about what is in this box and what's not in this box and what has to go and what has to be given away. So we've made a decision, just to say about the generosity. If there's any box that we brought from our previous church when we came to St. John's and we did not open it, for the last 17 years, that doesn't mean you must open it now. So you didn't open it and you haven't used the stuff that's in there for the last 17 years, give it away. Because that is the instruction of generosity that God calls us to. It's a simple way of taking stock of stuff, the stuff that you didn't need and that you didn't use for the last couple of years. You're not going to use now, so give it away. Maureen has done some, what you call it, scaling down, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for that painting. Yeah, it's going to be on the wall. Yeah. So thank you. Maureen has given us a painting by a gentleman that you will know, a Mr. Perro. I see Merle's nodding. A beautiful painting of flowers by. How come I can't get to his first name? Derek. The judge echoed. By Derek Perro. This is not about a sermon. One of the things that while Robin has been busy renovating this house that she bought, it's watching these programs on TV about house improvements. And all of a sudden, everybody in my house is now taken up with a feature wall. We never had one. Now everybody's got a feature wall, or should have a feature wall. What it is, I don't know. So I moved to get into the house, and Robin says, "And Dad, this is my feature wall." I said, "Okay." And that painting that Beryl gave you about that her husband did now, Beryl also gave me one. Beautiful one by Derek also. She says, that painting is going on my feature wall, and Maureen's picture is going on your feature wall. So we now have feature walls. Something I've never had in my life, I now have. But coming back to Solomon, Solomon is not about instruction. It's not just about giving moral and religious instruction. Solomon is saying, this is how you maintain your relationship with God. Careful about your actions, James warned. For your action is the reflection of your relationship. Instead of being judgmental, be more forgiving. Instead of being in a constant place of condemning, be more merciful. Be more gracious and loving and kind. And Solomon says it will change the life of Israel, and James says it will change the life of the world. If there is a little more of Jesus in it. And I am convinced about it. That if the world can simply receive a little more of Jesus, there will be less war and more peace. There will be less hunger and more food. There will be less refugees and more people at home. If only the world can receive a little more of Jesus. And that is the story of the woman who's of Greek origin in Mark's gospel. She's not supposed to be in that company. Everything about her excludes her from the presence of Jesus. She's Greek, she's a woman, and her presence makes him and every male in her presence unclean. And so there's the story of her asking Jesus to heal her daughter. And there's that conversation about we don't give the children's food to the dogs. Now, I explained that in a previous situation, a previous moment, is that in those days, in the days of Jesus, there were no serviettes. So at the end of the meal, you cleaned your hands with the bread that was left on the table. And that bread was thrown to the dogs. So she says to Jesus, just give me of that you are going to throw away anyway. But the lesson I have learned from it this time is this. She says to Jesus, in fact, in my opinion, just a crumb of your grace will make the difference. I'm not asking for the whole loaf. I'm not even asking for a place at the table. I'm simply asking that you give me a little bit of your grace. That will make a world of difference. And that teaches me the lesson is that it's not the amount of grace that makes the difference, it's the little that we are prepared to give. It's the little bit that we open and allow others in that makes the difference. It is the moment of embrace that Jesus brings to a stranger that brings the difference to her life, and to the life of her daughter. It is that moment of grace when she's allowed in. Now that's the remarkable gift when someone says, I'm not asking for a place at your table. I'm asking for that which falls off the table. And that grace will make the difference. And why Jesus had to spend all of that time, Mark's gospel is about that moment in chapter 7, the meeting of the woman of Greek descent and the man later in the Decapolis, is Jesus' encounter and the spreading of the gospel to the Gentiles. Because he has left the region of Israel and has gone beyond that. And Mark is convinced that that is where the gospel came to the Gentiles. And the gospel came by touching. The gospel came by hearing. That's the story of the man who's mute. His ears have been opened and his tongue loosened. And all of that happened because of a simple touch. And it is this faith that moves us to action that God calls us to. We never know in what ways we touch people's lives with a simple smile, with a simple nod when we greet. I always remember the story. It's a well-known story of the reason Bishop Tutu came into ministry and had this deep and passionate love for Bishop Huddleston, who was then a priest. Desmond says in one of his books, he says, the man passed our house and lifted his head, his hat to greet my mother. It was the first white person to do that to my mom. He said, and that moment changed me. You don't know what the impact is of a simple act. No one regards lifting one's hat in greeting someone else as that important. But for Desmond Tutu, it was. And when he was ill in hospital, struggling with TB, it was Trevor Huddleston who visited him. These are the moments that change lives. Touch and the conversation. I pray that St. John's will continue to be in conversation, not just among ourselves, but with the world around us, in whatever way we do it. Whether it's just writing down a name and the struggle to find that person an employment. Whether it's just about making clothes available to those who do not have. Those are the moments that change the world. I pray that God will make us gentle in our actions, faithful in our commitment, obedient in our call, gracious in our actions, loving, kind, and merciful in our relationship with others. May God bless you now and always. Amen. From our bulletin, just to say then that we will meet every Sunday at 8:30 here in the sanctuary. For those who are at home, please note, if you feel well enough and secure enough, please join us next week Sunday at 8:30 here in the sanctuary. Thank you to the many people who donated towards flowers. During the time when we were sort of in lockdown, many people donated. I know there was supposed to be flowers on the Sunday following the 18th. That was Aggie's birthday. Others donated flowers. I know the Sharon and Jeff Hindle donated money towards flowers. So that's why we have flowers here and flowers there and flower at the entrance. To all of you who donated towards flowers and allowed us to use it to brighten up the church, I was saying to Yano, I must really be getting old and ugly. That's why they need to put flowers next to me. But thank you very much. God bless you for the beauty. And it's a real sign of spring. And we thank God for your generous donations and for your faithfulness. Thank you also that even during this time, when we were not meeting in the sanctuary, you have been faithful in your giving towards the work of God. And so for that, we are eternally grateful, and we want to express a sincere word of thanks to all of you.